Behold your son. Behold the mother. When Jesus hung there on the cross, I believe he did something without fully realizing it. Within our culture, we as Christians have perpetuated the last 7 times Jesus spoke. We have arranged speeches around them. We have interpreted them in order for us to better understand what he did and what his sacrifice meant to us. But in reality, the words that Jesus spoke were not spoken out of wisdom or some kind of supernatural poem. Rather, these words were spoken by the man who was in the most desperate stage of his life, in the waning moments of his life. He was a dying man who was approaching the end. So when we evaluate and hear this third word, let us understand that being fully God and fully man, Jesus spoke his 7 last words as a man, but their meaning was of God. After all of his closest followers left him, betrayed him, run away, by either denying him or capturing him, only a handful of supporters sat in front of the cross. Of course, his mother was there, and the disciple whom Jesus loved. But before we get to Golgotha, let us go back to the forestation of the cross. When Jesus meets his mother, Jesus' face is bloody. He is tired as he holds a heavy cross upon his back. He trudges through the city, having fallen once because of the weight and the fatigue. While walking through the city, Jesus sees his mother. And in this moment, we see a son and his mother, not a God and a human who bore him. There is no glory in this situation. There is no regality. Mother Mary stands there among jeering citizens who continue to spit and taunt Jesus. She stands there with her sister, Mary of Cleophas, Mary of Magdalene, and the disciple whom Jesus loved. In this moment, Mary could have fought the crowd. She could have protested against Jesus' death. She could have cried out to her son, told him to throw down this cross, unleash a legion of angels to come down upon all these people. But instead, she stood there and watched her son walk to his death. She, knowing his power better than anyone, could have told him to do anything and would have gladly done it. But she didn't. Mother Mary was beyond any other human being we've ever seen. When the archangel Gabriel came down to tell her that she was going to be bearing the Son of Man, she said yes. And when she stood there in the streets watching her son die, knowing the prophecy that was sure to come, knowing the death of her son was going to happen, she said yes. It was her obedience and love of God that carried her through this situation. She loved God so much that she was willing to let her son die for the message and the prophecy that God was providing. She accepted the fate of her only son, the child that she raised. When one is supposed to love God above all others, as a message before anything, Mother Mary should be the leading example. Because she allowed the Father to take her son in the most gruesome way in order for the world to know his love, and through the extension of her sacrifice and obedience for the world to know her love. So when we honor the Virgin Mary, it is not only for her being the mother of God, but it is because her obedience for the Father was real, unselfish, and she executed her faith as supposed to be in all of us as we look at Jesus' influence in our lives. It is interpreted by the most educated scholars that the disciple that Jesus loved was John. John, the son of Zebedee, the brother of thunder. It was James, Peter, and John who witnessed the transfiguration. It was James, Peter, and John who were in the Garden of Gethsemane. But it was only John out of the 12 who sat at the foot of the cross. It would be John to hear about the empty tomb first. It would be John that would race there and be the first one to witness this empty tomb. This disciple was not only the disciple that Jesus loved. John was the disciple that truly loved Jesus. This man so greatly loved Jesus that he was not going to cower in fear as the other disciples did. He was not going to deny Jesus. He was not going to abandon him. He was going to stand right there with all the pain, with all the hate, with all the madness and praying that surrounded him. He was going to stand there as his teacher and his great friend. It was with this man that Jesus entrusted his mother. Jesus knew that if this man was going to be there through his death, standing next to his mother, walking with Jesus through the streets, sitting at the foot of the cross, he was the only man for the task of taking care of his sweet mother. To leave your messages and teachings with a man is one thing, but to leave the most important woman in your life, that is unprecedented trust. Could you imagine your child dying, burying your son or daughter before they have lived their full life? Could you imagine watching your best friend, your brother, and your teacher dying? Could you imagine watching Jesus die? As we observe Christ's death today, let us remember this man was a son, a friend, and a teacher. He was the greatest man to have ever lived. But let us also remember that though Jesus dies today, God did not die. Let us remember that Jesus was fully man and fully God. The human nature of Jesus